All right, well, welcome everyone. Glad to have you here. So today I'm going to kind of cover just a whole lot of different topics at once, right? But the goal at the end of this is to be able to build basically a complete deployable application, right? So you may have done some Ajax before, done some browser JavaScripts, or you may have made even an iOS app or something, but definitely, you want to have a handle on your JavaScript skills for this, and we're going to take that and then dive into the back end, right? What lives on a server, the ever important cloud. So to begin with, I'm going to just start by giving you a really high-level overview of what Sails.js is, and I'm going to assume you kind of know what Node.js is. I saw a comment earlier about asking, what is Node, and the one-liner on that, Node is basically a runtime on the server. So, and it can even be just on your laptop. The little, the black terminal. There's a white terminal in Chrome, and there's a black terminal that's like the actual computer or the server. That's where Node lives, and Node lets you run JavaScript there, which unlocks a whole bunch of crazy opportunities for people that know JavaScript already. So you can write files, you can interact with the low-level network sockets, right? Which you don't ever want to do that. You just want to write apps. But that functionality is what makes Sails able to do what it does, which is, as far as Sails, it's a MVC framework. So if you've worked with something like Ruby on Rails, or if you've heard of that, or Grails for Groovy, or .NET MVC with the Microsoft world, or Zen Framework, CodeIgniter, Symfony, Laravel. All of these things are back-end MVC frameworks, and they all kind of work vaguely the same way. Sails is that for Node.js. And the great thing about that is it means you can build your entire application in JavaScript. So that said, this is the Sails repo here. It's you probably won't actually need to come here very often because most of the documentation is actually on the website. So if you're looking at sails.js.org, and you can kind of poke around, there's a Get Started section that covers some philosophy if you want to read that later. There are some feature descriptions, but we're going to cover all that. The important thing I want to draw your attention to.
One sec.
Yeah.
Just one sec. Is there any chance that you can open desktop presenter again?
Definitely.
Do you have Dell selected there? Or do you have color LCD? There you go. That's it.
Is it
Sorry?
over?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, cool. So this is the documentation, right? And I just want to show you this right now ahead of time before we get too deep into it, so that you know where to look in case we miss something later on, right? But you'll notice in here you've got just kind of deep reference on everything that you can do with Sails. On the command line, you have these console options. You have the properties in the request object, the response object, and if you've seen Express or use Express, some of this stuff probably looks pretty familiar, and that's because Sails is actually built tightly on top of Express, right? There's no reason to reinvent that. And kind of my personal story behind Sails, just as a precursor here, is I needed to build applications in Node, right? When I say I needed to, I mean I needed to spiritually, or my brain was going to explode. So I ended up getting involved with trying to build a little thing on top of Express and Socket.io, like so many of us did in the Node community back in 2012 or 2011 or so. And what happened is just doing a bunch of real projects and needing to bring people in who were from PHP or other languages and make them, be empowered to actually make these apps. That's where Sails came from. So let me show you what it does, kind of what it's all about. This is my terminal. I have a little, folder with a bunch of projects in it, right? And a lot of people have a code folder. So what I'm going to do is go in here, and the first thing I'm going to do is make sure I have Node installed. So if you run Node on the command line, you're going to see, this little prompt. People call this a REPL. I have no idea what that stands for, but it's a nice word, and that's what you call it. And Ryan Dahl said that, so I do whatever he says. So you type whatever you want in here. It's just like JavaScript. You can do console.log. I mean, it is JavaScript. You can't do alert though, right? Because there's no window object. So that's really high level. I'm gonna mainly focus on Sails from going forward. But make sure you got Node installed. This is how you can tell if you do or not. To get out of here, you hit Control-C twice. Next thing you want to do is make sure you have Sails installed. So if you type Sails in the command line, you're going to get something that looks like this. And this is just telling you all the different things you can do with the Sails command line tool. So if you've got Sails and you've got Node, you're ready to go. The other thing that I use is Sublime Text 2, which looks a little bit like this. And you can use whatever text editor you want. This is just the one I'm most familiar with. OK, so I'm going to make a new Sails project. And the way that I do that is I run Sails new and then the name of the app I want to make. So I'm just going to call this one foobar. And I'm going to hope that I don't already have something named foobar, because that's always the first name I use. And I think I lucked out in this particular folder. So you know, I can cd into foobar. And if I take a look around, that GLS thing is just a little shortcut I have that does get status, get branch, and it also does ls with some colors, right? And it also clears the screen. So whenever you see me typing that, that's what it's about. If you ever want to, you know, just for reference, there it is. So next thing I do, I have a new Sails app here. You can see I've got like an API folder. I've got assets, tasks, config, and views. And there's a few other kind of loose change files floating around in there. Well, we're not going to worry too much about what those actually are right now. We just want to get something started really quickly. So the next thing I'm going to do after I made my app is just run Sails lift. And this is telling me, look, there's a boat. There's even seagulls. That was a pull request. And we have the version. You know, we're on Sails version 0.11. That just came out, and a lot of people ask, why are we not on version 1? And I think it's mainly just I'm really stubborn about not wanting to go past, get ahead of Node, right? And Node just launched their version, 0.12, and we'll be soon behind. And when Node goes to 1.0, we'll go to 1.0 too. So the other thing you can see in here is that it says that we're running in a development environment and that we're running on port 1337. So just think of it like, you know, much like any like place where a bunch of boats dock, you've got lots of ports available on your server or your computer, and this particular port is where my app is running. So what that means is if I was to open up in Chrome a new window, right, and point it at localhost :1337, and you may already be familiar with this, so bear with me, but you're going to see a boat, and this is your Sails app running on this port. So there's some help stuff in here, some links. So if you're ever just sitting around, you can't figure out where to go next to get some help, take a look. There's tons of questions on Stack Overflow, and a lot of answers as well. But cool. So that we have our little app. We could actually deploy this right now onto a server if we wanted to, and we would have a real working, complete thing. It's not particularly useful right now, so we'll make it a little bit better. The very first thing we'll do is just customize this a bit. So what I'm doing here is with SUBL is opening Sublime, and I just have a little shortcut to open it that way from the terminal. So this is my app. What's going on, what happens when I hit the home page is that it's actually hitting this right here, this little block of code. So this is a route, and what that's saying is that, hey, whenever any request comes to the server that this is hosted on, just that very root server URL, it's going to get served this view, this home page, and that's actually in views homepage.ejs. So this is just the generated stuff that comes out of when you run Sails new. You can see kind of the same stuff you saw on that page: generator REST API, generator REST API. I can change all this and just say hello world. And if I switch over to Chrome, I'm going to bring it back over to the other desktop here. The other thing you'll see me doing a lot probably is using this tool called ShiftIt, which I highly recommend. And that's how I can make stuff kind of swap between sides of the page. So if you want to check that out, I think it's like ShiftIt app if you search it on Google. OK, so back to the home page. I need to run Sails lift again. And that's going to start the server. And now you can see hello world. So awesome, we're making it slightly further now. So we can get our own front end stuff now. And now if you know HTML and CSS and JavaScript, you can start building a front end website, right? To that point, as far as like where would you put your HTML and your CSS, that is all going to live in the assets folder. So the assets folder is going to look familiar if you've used like something like Apache or other frameworks like Rails, where you have kind of a public folder where there's JavaScript, styles, images, etc. All sitting in here. You can throw stuff in this folder, and it's going to actually be automatically injected into the page via this grunt task called the Sails linker. All that's optional, but it's nice because it makes it easy to get started. So let me show you what I mean. If I go to Bootstrap and I grab some stuff from their website, we all know that the easiest way to get Bootstrap is actually just to copy and paste this crap here. Let's make sure that works. So, all right, good. Now we have a nice sans serif font. It's looking more like an app that came from this side of the 2000s, and it's coming together, right? That isn't always the best thing in the world if you want to actually be able to access your app when you're on a plane or something like that, and you don't have access to the internet, because what's happening is we're just pulling this stuff from a CDN, right, a content delivery network. So if we take this and we just straight up delete it, right, and we go back to Bootstrap and we just really download it, then we can open up this file and we can drag and drop it into our Sails app. So if I take this CSS that Bootstrap wants me to bring in, and I need the theme and I need the actual base file, and I'm going to open up the folder for my Sails app and drop it in. So it's going to go inside of assets, it's going to go inside of styles, and I'm just going to drop it right down. And you see this importer.less thing. If you've used less before, that's a great place for you to jump in and do the kind of stuff you might be familiar with. You don't have to, though. You can just throw CSS in here, too. So back to Chrome, take a look, and you can see that it actually ejected links to the Bootstrap theme and the Bootstrap CSS file because of that linker thing, right? And you can see it just found the spot that had the little comments and stuck it right in there. So that's good. You can do the same thing with JavaScript. Next thing we're going to do is bring in Angular, and you don't have to use Angular. It's just what I'm going to use in this course because I think it's one of the quickest ways to get something up and running. So if I go to angularjs.com or .org rather, I'm going to download Angular. Again, you can grab this little URL here and you can toss it in as a script tag yourself, or you can just straight up download Angular and pick it up, and you see all this crazy stuff. I'm a fan of just copying and pasting it, and then go into my JavaScript folder, make a new file named Angular, and then paste it. And then what I've got is effectively the same thing as if I had done some kind of more fancy download. So if that makes sense so far, we can cover any more questions about the basics there in just a little while. But I'm going to kind of continue on and get into some real-time stuff with Sails. OK, so this is, we have Angular now, which means that we can start actually using it. So first thing I'm going to do is do a little inline script right here so we don't have to get too sucked into the asset pipeline. And I'm going to just always, the first thing you do when you start writing some procedural code is make sure that it actually is running. So awesome, it's there, cool, we're all happy. I'm going to then start writing stuff. So the first thing you want to do with Angular is set up an ng app. And I'm going to name this one Platzi. And I'm going to also make a controller. And I'm going to call this like the, base controller, let's say. And I like to call them controls because Sails actually has a concept of a controller itself, and it's not good to have things that are overloaded terms, right? So cool, we're gonna do angular.module Platzi, and we don't have any dependencies, so we're gonna put an empty array, and that's saying, cool, we've now told Angular, registered on this page, that there's a Platzi ng app thing that we can use. So now I'm going to take this part of it, and what this is for is grabbing access to that Platzi app. And I'm going to say dot controller, and I'm going to name it base control, and I'm going to define it. And it's always good to do this with the bracket notation, because if you don't, when you minify this code, it's going to get all scrambled up. So we're going to bring in scope, which is the way that Angular lets you kind of do this magic data binding thing on the page. And the first thing we'll do is we're going to say scope.things equals an array of objects, where each object has a name, and we'll just say this one's like...
Wait. I think that give me 1 sec, please. Give me 1 sec. We had a small hiccup.
Right. Hello. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah, please keep going.
Cool. So as we were hanging out there, I saw someone ask, can you use Sails with any front-end framework? So absolutely. Like, Sails is not trying to say that it's going to solve like all of your problems and poverty in the world and stuff. We're really just focused on like, you already know how to do really great, amazing things on the front end. You can make apps that will like you can do all the modals, and you can do all the list views, and you can do any kind of amazing experience you want. You can make it responsive, right? And if you can't yet, you will be able to, because it's not that hard and it's where the world is going, right? And so you'll have those skills very soon. Sails is solving the problem of like, what happens when I submit this form? Or where am I going to get this data from? Or how am I going to serve 100,000 concurrent users, right? Those are the problems that you don't really want to have to solve from scratch. And when you are solving them and building that business logic or that kind of orchestration, you want to be able to use kind of a structured framework so that you don't get mixed up. All right, so we were over here looking at Angular, and we're just going to get a real basic thing running here. And the goal is we're going to start from the front end, and we're going to work our way back to Sails rather than trying to, I can show you Sails right now. There's a bunch of other places you can see on the internet that will do a quick run through and show you the features of Sails. I think a lot more helpful thing is to see an app coming together and then realize that you can realize where Sails is actually going to be useful for you. So that's what's up here. That's why we're spending so much time with Angular. So this is a list of things. Each one has a name, and each one has an ID. And we're going to give it an ID like this. Okay, so this is just one thing, but because we have it in our scope now, that means that we can have a unordered list in our HTML. Or who uses OLs anyways these days, right? I never used OLs. So I'm going to give this a ng repeat, and I'm going to say thing and things. And I could name this whatever I want, right? It could be like blah and things. It could be pet and things, but it's going to be thing and things. And we're going to make it display a span, and it's going to use the name of the thing. So pretty glamorous, I know. Put these side by side. If you're using ShiftIt, that's actually me doing Command option left and command option right. So just for posterity there, it's a great tool. Everyone should use it, I think. Awesome. So it's saying, hey, what is going on here? Angular is not defined, and that's because now I'm going to show you more shortcuts. And I hope that you like shortcuts, because there's going to be a lot of keyboard shortcuts. So this is me doing Command Option U, opening up the source code of the actual HTML page. This is it not rendered, right? This is what the server sent down raw. And you can see that there's Angular, but all I did before when I copy and pasted was I copy and pasted the text to angular.js, which isn't particularly helpful. So I'm going to go run back over to the Angular website, grab the real thing, and then copy and paste that. All right. There's the real Angular. And if I check this out now, we should be significantly closer. So that was me doing Command Option J to open the inspector. I'm getting a few different missing errors, right? So you get angular.min.js.map, and that is the minification map that was mainly just for making your errors better. I'm not going to worry about those too much right now. You also see this little sailboat. That's the sockets in Sails connecting to the backend. And then you also see that I have some kind of unexpected identifier, which is usually when you type something wrong. So, all right, I'm going to look a little bit closer, and I'm going to see what's going on over here. And I see that I have a base control. I see that I'm bringing in scope as a dependency of this function. And then I am saying scope.things equals this, and I'm missing a comma. So add the comma. Refresh the page a few times. Sometimes it takes a second for grunt to come through. It's now saying Angular is not defined. That's because at this point in the page, Angular is not available yet, right? So if I want to make it available, if I go to layout, that's where this homepage.ejs is getting injected. You can see there's this body thing, and homepage stuff's in there, and then layout is kind of everything else. And you can see Angular doesn't actually get brought in until down here. That's the problem. So different ways you can do this. Realistically, your script normally is going to come in after Angular at the bottom. You know, also I could just copy and paste this up here, and then I'll have access to Angular. So you can see there it is. It says foo. But let's go ahead and try it the other way, because then we don't really want to have the scripts above the content of the page. That's why you always see you're supposed to put scripts down at the very bottom of your HTML page, and it's because they'll actually lock the browser. And especially modern browsers have gotten better about not waiting on things that prevent the rest of the page from loading. Scripts are special because they could really be doing anything that they want to your web page, so they need to go to the bottom. So how do we do that? Well, I'm going to take this stuff that I had in this inline script tag, and I'm going to toss it into a new file in my JS folder. And I'm going to name the file, let's call it general, or let's call it spa.js. Okay, so another thing you see is that there's this dependencies folder. And other than just kind of organizational structure, the reason why this is here is that in the default grunt tasks in Sails, if anything you throw in the dependencies folder is actually going to come before everything else. So with Angular, that's important, right? We want to make sure that this goes in there. Now, something that's rather annoying about Sublime is that you can't move files easily with like drag and drop. So a lot of times what I do when I want to move something is I'll just, again, copy and paste the whole thing, delete the old one, and then create the new one. So I'm going to go into the JS, in assets, JS dependencies, bring in angular.js, paste it in there. And now if we look in the browser, it's working without me having to do any of the crazy reorganization of the page. And we can see if we hit Command Option U again, it opens up the view source, and you can see that our little app is down here in spa.js. And you also see angular.js there. It still has the old file. It hasn't deleted it. If we kill the server and start it up again, that'll go away. There it is. So back here, and you saw it also was kind of showing this little like sunken ship when I did that, and that's because the connection with the server was lost when you kill the server. So when you see all that and all those errors in the front end, it's not a big deal. It's just as soon as you lift the server again, and it's going to come back up. Okay, so I spent some time thinking about what would be a good demo for us so we can make it through in a relatively brief period of time, but it would still be like a real app, right, that was useful. And what I came to was that we could take some kind of list view, kind of classic high score list app, but then turn it into something that we could actually deploy at the end of this and make a little social network, right? So we'll see how this evolves, but what I did earlier, and this is sort of a, I'm a closet domain hoarder, so I bought emobook.io, and the reason I bought this is not necessarily because of my haircut, but also because I think it would be really cool to sort of crowdsource emoticons, right, or emoji. And if you're wondering what an emoticon is, it looks sort of like that, where there's a happy face, or sometimes they'll use, colons, or everyone's used these things. Okay, so if we're going to use that, I'm going to close all these extra windows I have here. We're already sort of part of the way there. I mean, most apps at any point, there's going to be like a list of things that we have to manage, right? So we've got a thing in things. Why don't we make this more like emoji in emojis, okay? And then we'll change the name of this from thing to emoji. And we'll go to our spa.js file, and we'll name, instead of things, we'll call it emojis. And instead of name, this is one of those times where it's like, well, it's the emoji, right? We're going to name this property like text, and we'll make it look like that. And we can make a few more of these. And what you can do with Sublime is use Command D, and it'll actually highlight multiple things. So if you highlight some text like this, and you hit Command D, Command D, Command D, now I have like multiple cursors, like a pinball machine, right? What I'm going to do is give these things different IDs, and I'm going to give them some different emojis here, maybe with a big nose. Yeah, let's give this one a big scary nose. Okay, good. Now let's look at the page rendered, and you can see that nothing works, and that's because if I go back here, I'm still calling it name, I'm not calling it text. So if I name that text, now I see emojis. So that's important because like that's something, on the front end, we have to deal with this all the time, where it's like data will change in one place, or if you're working with an existing API or a server that's kind of like been there for a while, or sometimes even a different team, they'll have their own way of building up this API, and if it changes, all of your code breaks, right? So in this case, that's just one iteration of that. Okay, so we have this list of things. That's great. We want to hook it up to the server. That's where Sails comes in. Everything up to this point we could have pretty much done wherever, right? There's some fancy grunt magic, but nothing too crazy. So I'm going to kill the server with Control-C, not Command-C if you're on a Mac, and I'm going to run Sails generate API emoji, because what I want to do is have this API, this REST API for emojis. And it says, hey, create a new API. Cool, that's good. That would have taken a while otherwise. So I run Sails lift again, and there's a little daemon in Sails core that says, excuse my interruption, but it looks like you have some stuff that I don't like. And it's saying, hey, watch out. You now have models. And I'm not sure if you have data that already lives in your database or not, but just in case you do, I know a few tricks, but I'm not going to just go try some stuff without you telling me that, like, hey, it's okay to do some weird experimental stuff on your data. Now here, I don't have any data at all, right? I don't even have a database hooked up. So I'm going to, and I took too long to make a decision. I'll try it again. So I'm going to choose 2, which is alter. And this is basically an auto migration strategy that's going to wipe out whatever was there before and try to add it back in, but not care that much. So you don't want to use this in production. You're going to want to use safe in production, but we'll cover that in a second. So server's back up. we look over here, I mean, nothing's changed, right? The difference is what we can do now. So if I open up spa.js, right now we're basically faking some data. And I'm going to go ahead and take this and drop it into the code down at the bottom of your screen there, so you can access it and see what we're up to over here yourself. So it should be showing up on your screen. Okay, so this file right now has some fake stuff in it. This is, you know what, I'll send the HTML your way too. This is homepage.ejs. And we'll open up our views, toss you homepage.ejs. The rest of the files in the Sails app is probably just faster for you to run Sails new. There's not a whole lot of magic in there, right? It's all the same. Everybody's going to get the same app other than these files. Okay, so this is fake emojis. These aren't real. If we wanted to get some stuff from the server, this is where Ajax comes in handy. You know, we could have bootstrapped this data on the page, and whenever I say that, what I'm indicating is like just stuff it on there so that when it comes down from the server initially, like when we hit Command Option U and opened up the page that looked like this, that it would already be baked in. So that's what Google likes to see, because it will actually determine your page rank based on what it sees in here. We don't care about that right now, right? We don't care yet. We're going to start by just building this as a single page app, and we're going to use Ajax to get the data we need. What that means is that the HTML itself is going to be the same for every single person that visits the page. So they're going to get like a really great experience as far as performance, because we can toss that out onto like a content delivery network like S3. Not that that's really a CDN, but something like that. And then they'll be able to, you know, everyone can share the same file. They're all getting the same thing, so it gets downloaded super fast because it's static. But right now we're still at the beginning of our little, you know, pseudo product we're building here, so we should probably just get to work. This is the dependencies in your controller or in your Angular control. We already have scope. I'm going to add HTTP, which is a little tool that lets me talk to the server from my front end via Ajax. It's just this promisey thing on top of XML HTTP requests. So instead of faking the emojis, what I can actually do is run http.get, and I'm just going to try this, right? I'm going to put in emoji. I'm going to do .then, and I'm going to get some data from the server. So this res here, I'm going to call it response for clarity. This is going to be like the response that the server sends me. It could have a number of different things in it, right? It has potentially what you call a body. It has what you call headers, and it has what you call a, what am I missing here? Pablo, what's the third thing that comes in an HTTP response? The status code. So the status code is sort of taken care of for us by Angular, because if there's an error, we can handle it in .catch, and we'll be able to kind of do that, which if you've used Node before will look kind of familiar if you've used it with promises. Right now, we won't worry about that too much. We're going to do response.data, which is the body that came back, which is what we really care about pretty much. And we're going to stuff that inside of scope.emojis. And we can get rid of all this stuff. Oh, there he goes. Ah! Okay. So scope.emojis is going to get populated with this data, but only after the HTTP request comes back. Let's make sure we saved. We did. We'll refresh the page, and then we see absolutely nothing, which is sort of what you'd expect because we don't have any emojis in the system. So let's open up, let's open up /emoji and see what we're actually hitting, right? What we get is an empty array, and the reason why we get that is because Sails automatically generated a REST API for us. So real quick, we'll create an emoji. Awesome. We probably should have given it some text, so we're going to give it text equals smiley face. We're going to give this one slightly different smiles. That one doesn't have any eyes, and this one is a real test of Chrome's automatic escaping. That's using shortcut blueprints. Don't worry, you turn them off in production. But what it means is you have this little API, and you have those emojis. So cool, no big deal. That works fine, great. So what would be better though is if it was all in real time, right? And what we can do to achieve that is let's ditch this HTTP noise and switch over to using sockets. So out of the box, you're going to get this socket.io thing with an auto-connecting socket in Sails. That's coming from this Dependencies Sails.js file. So we're gonna do that. We're gonna use io.socket.get instead of using http.get, and it doesn't do the promise thing. If you want to do that, you can use Angular Sails, a project by this guy Rob Wormwald. But in this case, we'll just do it this way. io.socket.get emoji. We need to change the way we do stuff slightly. So instead of response, I'm going to get some data. I'm going to stuff it in scope.emojis, and then there's one more step, which is I need to call scope.apply. And this is taken care of for you in Angular Sails again. But what's happening is when you use HTTP from Angular, it's special, right? It's going to automatically kind of handle the rendering that occurs, right? It's if you want to Google digest loop, you can spend the next 4 years figuring it out, and then Angular won't even be around anymore. But it's basically a way for you to tap in and have it automatically re-render. If you're not using an Angular HTTP thing, you have to do it yourself. So that's what scope.apply is doing. So this should work, and it does, thankfully. Pretty cool. So that didn't actually do anything different for us, but what we can do is do io.socket.on, and we're going to listen for anything that happens with these emojis. So sometimes the server will send us events, and those events have something called a verb. Not necessarily all the time, but when you're using the default behavior in Sails, which we call blueprints, they will. So there's going to be a verb. It's going to be called created sometimes, and when it's called created, you can expect that it'll also have this data property. And if it does, that means that we can do scope.emojis.push event.data, and we're going to push that new emoji on to our list of emojis, and we're going to have to call scope.apply again. But what did I do wrong? I'm missing a case. Okay. So if I was to go in here and I hit create again, and this time I'm going to make a sad face. Oops. Text equals sad face. You can see it actually just showed up, right? Which is like, whoa, okay, cool. How does that work? Well, we'll cover that more in a second, but basically the important thing is now you have an Angular app that works in real time without you having, and I'm going to pick more of these, I like this one. So without you really having to necessarily go much further. Obviously, you'll want to customize this further. You'll want to take advantage of like all sorts of other integrations. You might want to know like what database is this. Could be Mongo, could be Postgres, could be MySQL. You might want to deploy this on the server, but the important kind of first step is like seeing something working, and then let's work our way back from there. We might even have time to try to deploy it right now. I have a Heroku app that I set up, or I have a Heroku account anyways. This has actually gotten so easy now. It's crazy. So if you make a Heroku account, it'll look kind of like this. This is a more or less brand new one, and I can actually just go in and it tells me like what language do you want to pick, and I picked it, and it opens some documentation. Like I'm actually going to read that. I see a plus, so I'll hit the plus, and awesome app name. Let's call this. Let's see, what is our app named again? I think we should just, emo's not available, maybe emo book is awesome, and then we'll go ahead and create it. And so it's talking about lots of stuff, but we're just going to use GitHub. And so the easiest way to quickly make a free GitHub repository is, I'm going to actually rename this really quick. I'm going to back up a level. I'm going to move foobar into emo book. I'm going to cd back into emo book. I'm going to close Sublime so it doesn't get confused. And now that I'm in emo book, I'm going to do git init. Oops, spelled it wrong. That's going to make this a Git repository. All that means is it created a hidden folder named .git. Really, it's not a big deal. I'm going to do git add dot. That just adds stuff. And then I'm going to do git commit am initial commit. And cool, added a bunch of stuff. Finally, I don't have any kind of GitHub repo yet, but if you have the Hub command line tool, which you can get with Homebrew or various other places, just search for it. It's called Hub. You can just run hub create. And what that's going to do is take care of automatically creating a GitHub repo for you. And now all I have to do is git push u origin master, because it actually added the remote for me too. Bam, cool. It works. I can actually type hub browse at this point. And now what's going to happen is, assuming I've opened the right window in Chrome, there's Emobook. It's live. Now that I've got a repo, if I go back to Heroku, I can connect to GitHub. I can choose Emobook, search for it. Hopefully it shows up. It does. I connect. It's talking about all kinds of stuff, but mainly I just want to make sure that it automatically deploys every time I push anything, and I'm going to have it deploy from master. So I am going to watch it npm install and all this exciting stuff. But meanwhile, there's this little button up here, and that's going to open up the thing for me. It hasn't finished deploying yet, but as soon as this is done, it'll come online. So in the meantime, you can see it's kind of like doing some installation steps. In case you aren't familiar with npm, what's happening here is every node package, right, has a folder called node_modules, and that's kind of just like it's where you keep your dependencies, right? And dependencies are things like on the front end we're used to like jQuery or Angular or Lodash. On the back end, you might have Lodash in there, you might have Sails in there, you might have Express in there, and sometimes you'll see that it it actually does this thing called node-jip. And also, if you're kind of doing this along with me right now, sometimes one of the things people run into with npm is that it'll just fail at that node-jip step. That's because it's trying to compile stuff. I forget what JIP stands for. I think it's like I have no idea. You can look it up. It's an acronym for something. It came out of Google. But that's trying to compile some native modules. So in our case, it's coming from Socket.io, where it's trying to compile the WebSocket module, or the raw WS module. Anyways, that's a non sequitur. Back to the point, it looks like we're done and it deployed to Heroku. So if you go to emobook.herokuapp.com, fingers crossed, we'll actually have an app there. The first time you hit anything on Heroku on one of these free accounts, it actually has to spin up a new server because they're cheap, right? But I'm so happy that they exist because it means we can put these servers up for free, right? So whenever this finishes loading in like 30 seconds or so, you'll see the app. You should be able to go there and you should be able to chat with each other in real time. And when I say chat, I mean draw emojis. So it won't have the list of emojis that we already created, though, because those only live on my local machine, right? It's going to have just a completely empty new list of things. And what I forgot to do when I deployed this was, you know how we lifted before? We lifted our app, and it gave us this prompt and was talking about migration strategies and such. You can make that go away if you just go in to the config folder and models.js and uncomment this line of code. And what we're saying is we're just telling Sails, hey, I'm okay with you doing this. Add the migrate alter strategy to config, and then git push. So we're okay with we're okay with Sails just trying to auto migrate right now because we're in development and we don't have a strict schema yet. We don't have like certain data that we don't want to change or break. If those little happy faces I've been drawing over here, while I am proud of them, if they had been more of like an ASCII masterpiece, I may have wanted to go with migrate safe. So it's going to take it just a little bit of time before it automatically picks up the fact that there's been some new changes. But when it's done with that, we should have an app. Oh, and I think we may be in luck. So if you go and you go to emoji/create and you make yourself a little face, I think I actually did the wrong, I didn't do anything. I need to give it text equals happy face. And there it is. So, and there's, of course, the first one is exactly what you'd expect. So if I wanted to get rid of that guy, actually, I can go into emoji, and this will just be a never-ending battle. So you can see that it's ID 3. I can hit destroy, and we'll say 3. Bam, it's gone. All right, and now I'll just play censor for the rest of the course, I think. But I think we're coming up on a break. So after we come back, we're going to cover some more fine-grained details about how you can start making this into a real kind of app. And we'll kind of keep deploying this as we go along so we can all see it together.